On my 33rd birthday, my boyfriend at the time was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And the next day, which was Father's Day, and also the day I was born, he proposed. So my boyfriend went from boyfriend to death sentence to fiance. I went from girlfriend to fiance to full-time caregiver. And in that process, my life started to fall apart in that moment. And it was like in that moment, the whole thing was going up in smoke. And so not only was my person getting stripped from my fingertips, but the life that I had like lived for was getting taken away as well. And I had no choice. I had to let it go.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency.
Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to Business Origin Stories. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Alex Sabbag. She's an author, speaker, two-time business owner, and entrepreneur. She owns a very cool studio called Solace Yoga, which was founded in 2022 in Palm Desert, California. And she recently just released her debut memoir, Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep, which you can grab on Amazon. It's Alex's story of resilient triumph in and outside the studio, on and off the yoga mat. I got my hands on it a few weeks ago and couldn't put it down. It's a beautiful journey and a very vulnerable share, and it's definitely worth reading if you've ever had to pivot in life or have been faced with hard things and needed to come out on the other side transformed. So I really hope you enjoy this interview with my beautiful friend Alex, and if you feel called to, grab her new book, Soul Dive. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hi, Amy. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so grateful you're here. I saw you in person in October. It's been too long, so it's good to see you for this podcast interview.
Good to see you too. I wish I was with you.
I know. Tell everybody, where are you right now?
I'm in San Diego, Solana Beach, which is North County, San Diego. This is actually where I lived. And I think my mail is going to come here after 4 years of not really knowing where to send my mail.
I think that's so fun. We're going to talk about this today because Alex, tell everybody what you do, and then we'll explain why you just said that, because I think that is a very big part of your story is, where do you get your mail? You're just living this kind of nomad life in a little bit of a way. And so, but tell everyone, what do you do? And then we're going to dive into your book.
Yeah, I own Soul Dive Yoga, and Soul Dive is a yoga studio in Palm Desert, which is exactly 2.5 hours from where I am right now. The studio is on El Paseo, which is like the rodeo drive of the desert. It's beautiful. We just celebrated 1.5 years. It'll be 2 years in October.
Congratulations. How often are you driving up there? Because that's a bit of a haul.
Yeah, so where it started and where we are now are in two different places. At this point, I go back tomorrow and I will teach one class on June 1st. And then I will actually come off my schedule for the next few months, maybe more, give or take, to take the book and my story on the road and start connecting with people outside of the yoga practice.
Yeah. So I want to talk about yoga practice today because I think it's amazing, but you're really here because you just published your first book. I say first because I know you have probably 10 more books in you, and it's beautiful. And right before we hit record, I was just showing you, I'm like so close to being done, but I'm basically 98% of my way through it. And it's an amazing, amazing memoir. And you're in the next phase of your life to really step into your personal brand in a new way, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, you were there when the personal brand was established. I would say I've spent the better part of my life and career, which have been very much folded together since I started my first business at 25, doing things, living in a way for other people, doing business for other people. You know, I was in PR for the better part of my career. And that's always like the off camera, behind the scenes, I'm going to tell you what to say. And now I've flipped it. Mm-hmm. So my story is now coming out on the forefront. And I'm hoping that through that, I can, kind of inspire people and support them through their own life journey. Because really, when you break it down, like there's nothing really special or unique about my story. Everybody has one. Everybody goes through some life-defining moment that completely knocks them off their skis. And, we're like, oh my God, we're dizzy, like the Tweety Bird thing. We don't know which way is up or down. And how do we move forward? And so, I certainly had mine, which there's no surprise. So you 2 pages into the book and you know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But it's really not about that. For some people, it's a career loss, it's a divorce, it's moving, it's some sort of a life event that really changes things, where there's a before and there's an after.
Mm-hmm. Give people who haven't read your book yet, give them just a quick snapshot. What is your book about? What do you hope people take from it? Because you're right, your story may not be unique, but it is unique in the fact that you went through something really, really hard. And now you're on the other side in a way and able to look back and process and really try to step into that next phase of healing in life. And so what, if you could just tell people, what's just a quick snapshot? What should they expect from this book?
Yeah. On my 33rd birthday, my boyfriend at the time was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And my birthday's on June 16th, so it's coming up. And the next day, which was Father's Day, and also the day I was born, he proposed. So my boyfriend went from boyfriend to death sentence to fiance. I went from girlfriend to fiance to full-time caregiver, and put my PR company that I had had for about 9 years at the time on ice, and started just dedicating kind of every waking minute to his care, his treatment, his life and survival. And in that process, which I would never take back, and if I had to do it all over again, I would. So I say that if I fully mean it. My life started to fall apart in that moment. And it was less about, I think something that became really clear to me years after was that it's like the match was lit and I had already had the gasoline in my hand. And the life that I had always attached to, I've always wanted to be married. I've wanted a family. I've wanted this whole, I wanted the Lincoln Park brownstone in Chicago since as I was 18 and moved there for college. And it was like in that moment, the whole thing was going up in smoke. And so not only was my person getting stripped from my fingertips, but the life that I had lived for was getting taken away as well. And I had no choice. I had to let it go. I didn't exactly do it willingly for a long time, but that's kind of the crux of the moment. And then there's the before and there's the after, and what do you do? And, on the heels of it. And we can easily take ourselves totally out of the ring of life, fall into the abyss of darkness and sadness and woe is me, depression. And there's certainly a moment for that. We can't just get up and say it's rainbows and butterflies and nothing's wrong, we're fine. But it was a huge lesson in surrender and letting go of all the things that needed to be taken away because they were not for me anymore. And including him as my person and the relationship and the white picket fence dream and the whole thing. This may or may not have been possible. This book, my story, opening Soul Life Yoga, the whole thing, you wonder if that incident hadn't gone down, which I coined as a 2x4 moment. That's my thing. It's it's not the moment that's hey, excuse me, look over here, listen over there, the nice whisper. Those are great. And I would really encourage you to listen to those, because if you don't, something's going to come up and really hit you upside the head and again, knock you down. And that was very much the diagnosis and that whole experience.
Yeah, it was, you wrote it in a way that was very vulnerable. And obviously you've taken a lot of time to do your work, to come back to those moments and reflect. And I think that happens, again, most of us are not going to have that type of situation happen necessarily, but you're right. There's always something that happens in our lives. A divorce, something happens with a parent, there's always something. And it's what you choose to do with that information afterwards and how you get back up and how you move forward. And your book is called Soul Dive, which is also the name of your yoga studio. And how beautiful. How did you come up with that name when you were naming your yoga studio? Did you always have that as the mantra for your healing process, or how did you get to that place? Because it's such a beautiful combination of words.
So I was a caretaker for 6 months. And in that time period, I lived, for him and our situation and the whole thing. And it, again, the diagnosis was on June 16th. So it was about end of July and also I have an 18-year-old dog at the moment who is still with us. He was almost 6 years younger at this time. And he went on bed rest. He hurt himself. So I had a human on bed rest and I had this little animal that had been with me since he was 8 weeks old. And I remember I had this little patch of grass behind my apartment in Chicago. And this whole story is in the book, by the way, in a lot more detail. But I made a cocktail at my neighbor's house because all the alcohol was out of my house at the time. And I carry my sweet little dog down and I sit in there and I literally sit on this tiny wrought iron fence. I don't know if there's a video component to this, but it's 8 inches tall. Alfie is 8 pounds, so he's not going over the fence. And I was like sipping this cocktail. I was like, this is it. This is the bottom. I've made it. I've arrived. I am sitting here and I don't think my life could possibly get any worse. The good news about that is it really can't. If you're truly there, it really can't. If you're aware of it, that's amazing. That was such a gift. Didn't make it easier, didn't make the process out any less painful. In fact, it probably made it more because then you're aware. But I knew that I just had to keep going. And I also knew we weren't going to get married. And I knew this life that I thought I was going to have wasn't going to happen. I didn't really do anything about it in the time. I just was like, this really sucks. And I hope I'm not here for long. But here I am. We had an engagement party. By the end of October, he had gone back to live with his parents in Southern California. So it was 24/7 care. And I couldn't do it. It wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for him. It was just like, it was a horrible, tragic circumstance. Then and it had to shift. I, in that time of taking care of him, went to yoga every single day because it was the only thing I could do. Studio was around the corner. I had a practice. I was a part of the community. And I knew when I brought him home from treatment, he would sleep so soundly that I could leave for an hour and he would be fine. The dog would be fine. He'd be fine. I could go. So I went and I learned the very first day that I went in the studio with my brand new shiny engagement ring and my whole life about to fall apart, what it meant for somebody to hold space for me. And the first teacher that received me, and I think this is like one of the most powerful like little tidbits in the book, is she didn't pity me. She didn't there little girl me at all. It was like, you are home and whatever needs to happen for you in this space, this is your permission to do it. I had permission to show up and simply be in whatever way, shape, or form I was in that moment in time. And I didn't need to be anything else. Period. The end. Chaturanga, don't chaturanga. Do the pose, don't. Flop around, cry, laugh. Did not matter one bit. And nobody had ever given me permission in yoga or otherwise to just be as is. And I think that's a really important note. Where can you go? Anywhere. I mean, just like not have to conform to any kind of social norm or, a little bit of crowd pleasing here, a little bit of obligatory living over there. I really can't think of anything. And it was through that experience where yoga's higher power really struck for me. And it wasn't about this like long, lean summer body anymore. It was like this emotional reprieve from what I was going through with like this tiny little bit of time, of space, of movement to get something out of my body that, all this stuff just gets packed into our tissues. That was a saving grace. It really was my lifeline. I'm a woman of faith. I am a Jesus girl. Like I'm a God girl. And as much as that was there for me, and I continue to have a very prayerful and faith-filled life, yoga was the thing that got me out of bed every single day outside of literally keeping a human alive. And after doing that, it's like anything else. You do something and you feel some kind of positive effect. You're like, you get a little curious and you want to know why. And that's what sparked me to go to teacher training. I was like, I've got to do something to just like, for me, like I've got to heal. I've got to find my purpose. I've got to figure out like kind of what the heck I'm doing here or what I'm called to do here on this earth. And I kind of made a list. I was like, I could go back to French school. I could get my sommelier certification, big wine gal. I could do Second City classes. Chicago is like the home of comedy. And all of those things are wonderful, but they all had this like kind of big drinking component to them. Like, I'm not going to go French school and not drink a bunch of French wine. Come on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just like think yoga's going to win. And so I did it. And I kind of like, I kind of go from 0 to 60 in anything I do if I'm passionate about it. And I went totally all in on just self-discovery and self-study and this introspective work. And I literally took myself out of the ring of life for about 18 months. And the training was not nearly that long. I just was like, whoever, like just this really like kind of personal work and time. And I was sort of like coming out of it and was having a casual conversation with a girlfriend. And she's like, it's cool, Alice. It was your soul dive. And I was like, wow, I'm going to use that somewhere and I don't know where. And then fast forward, the seeds for this studio have been planted like far beyond I even am willing to admit, But soul dive is just like such a special pairing of words for me. It literally is a verb. It was me taking myself out of life and putting myself on the bench, which, by the way, I don't recommend that to people. I don't think we have to stop living to keep learning. And I definitely don't think we have to be completely healed to be fully loved. I did, though, at the moment. I didn't know. I didn't know better. I just thought I had to go like into this cave and then come out with a bow on my head and be this shiny new human to then be capable of all the things that I wanted for myself. And there was not a ton of juice to that, even though I did learn quite a bit in the process. And the most ironic part about it is when I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to come back, COVID hit. And it was like, actually, you're going to go back in there for a little longer. So, the invitation to come into the studio and have your own little mini soul dive is not to like be out for 5 years. It is to be out for 5 minutes, to take 10 breaths, a yoga class, to just have a minute that's yours and like work through something that comes up in the moment. We can't work through it all. And, it's like this camp doesn't exist where it's like, I'm going to go there for 2 weeks and I'm going to process all the grief. I'm going to go through all the people in my life I love and I'm going to pretend they died and I'm going to process it and come out. Please. I mean, that's not real. We have to do it bit by bit with whatever comes up, in the moment, which is why, the mission of the studio is to come in any way, shape or form you are, to simply be, period. That's it. Lay there, move, whatever. I don't care. Listen to the music, connect with somebody, have a tea, have a glass of wine, like just be in the space and take a minute.
And that permission is so beautiful. I've been to yoga classes where the teacher has, said, just sit here if you need to. And that was a big deal because in my mind, yoga was always, it was a form of exercise and something fun. So I love that teacher sparked that for you and gave you that permission when you really needed it. And I love that you're now passing that on to other people. Like, how beautiful is that? Also, whoever your friend was that came up with those 2 words, gorgeous.
Right? Yeah, it lands. And there was no doubt. Although I will say, like, but to bring it to the book for a second, I've always been a writer and a speaker, and I've always known that that's like my gift. And I was using it. I wasn't totally off by being in PR. That's pretty writing, but I wasn't sharing my own. And I remember like being, I think like one of my biggest heartbreaks was when I was like 25. My boyfriend showed up at my door, knocked on it, and broke up with me out of the blue and then moved to Japan. And I was like, what the actual? Like, I mean, I was a mess. I lived on red wine and soy lattes after that. But it was also sort of the dawn of this like online dating era. And then I like started a serial date in Chicago and lived life. And my mom was like, you need to write these stories down. This is crazy. Like, what are happening to you, or these things that you're a part of? Like, what? Like, no. And so, but I didn't do it. I was too afraid. I didn't have the courage or the confidence to like, make it big on this like dating blog. And in hindsight, I'm really glad I didn't, because as much as that's entertaining, and that's certainly in here, it's in here and you just wait, girl, the next book's already writing itself. It's not, it lacks the depth and the authenticity. And I think that what people are really looking for is somebody to show up and just be fucking real.
Yeah.
And forget, like, skip the charade, like take this like fluffy nonsense. There's a chapter called Happy Horseshit. It's probably my favorite chapter. Like, just could we get that out of the way, please? And just talk about something that's real. And that's always been my deal. Like, we don't have to talk about the weather. Studios in Palm Desert, the sun comes out every single day, which is why the record collection is on the wall. Like, when you walk in, you'll see my record collection, which is from my engagement party with my fiance. And we want students to pick a record, put it on, so that the next person that comes in is like, oh my God, I love that song. It reminds me of this memory or that. And then, it's like this whole, it's real, authentic connection. Like, you're no longer just like filling time and space with hot air. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about, because I think this probably happens to a lot of business owners. Yeah, just listening to you say, like, I put my PR company on pause, and then I pivoted and took this teacher training class. And now I have a studio in the desert, which is amazing. That's quite a transition, Alex. And I'm wondering if you could talk to, what was the process? Obviously, you're going through a lot personally with your fiance and these other pieces, but I think this happens to people all the time. They build a business and it's great and it's lucrative and it's all these things, but they want something else. They want that authentic something. Can you talk to me about that process of letting go of something that you had built and pivoting so hard into another direction? Can we go there?
We can. One thing I will note, though, is the timeline was long. Okay, we're talking years. It's not like training and then poof, I have a studio in the desert. So I think it's important to note that, like, if you are playing the short game and you're just going for the end result, you're going to crash and burn at some point. There are no overnight successes. They just don't exist. They're not successful. They're fleeting. They're momentary. And I am somebody who's wanted things to happen on such an aggressively fast timeline because I have absolutely no patience. I want it right now. And that has not served me well. It is also a very hard habit to break. And I will tell you that I did myself a huge service and bought 2 bottles of French rosé named Patient this weekend. The work never ends.
I love this. Thank you for saying that though. Because I think we see things right online or on Instagram and everyone looks like they've just like done it. And you saying that and saying like, listen, even though it's still the work that you're doing. So
Every
for saying that.
day.
Yeah.
Hey, and I will tell you, it has less and less to do with a physical yoga mat. I love yoga. Don't get me wrong. So the path so teacher training happened. It was like the following year, and I was ready to come back to work. Here's the way. Okay, let's back up like 1 second. Okay, he gets diagnosed on June 16th. On June 15th, my number 2, her name is Ashley. She was my director of media relations. She checks into the hospital to have her second baby. So the whole leadership team of my company is now literally at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I call my 20-year-old intern. I'm like, look, shit completely hit the fan. You're now the CEO. Congratulations. I don't care if everybody fires us, but like lose my number and lose hers too. Do what you can. This woman not only kept every single one of my clients, but she went on to work at The View and has this fantastic journalism career as a result. So I can also get on a soapbox about investing in young people because I'm a huge fan. I wouldn't be without them. And these young people
Beautiful.
have their own cameos.
Yeah.
So I was ready to come back at a certain, in like the winter. I don't even know exactly when I was ready, but my clients were mostly in the nonprofit space and healthcare related. So it was this combination of Ashley was coming back from maternity leave. We had minimal clients. We weren't the roster wasn't fully built. We couldn't afford to bring me back. And B, I was too triggered by the hospital setting. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go to the board meeting. I couldn't sit at the table because guess what happened? Oh, are you okay? How are you? Just say to that. Fucking terrible. My person's dying, right? It's like there's no, it wasn't the right time. And like, thank God, because I wasn't ready and the business wasn't ready for me to come back anyway. So I was still around, like I supported it here and there. But I will tell you, when my fiance went back to live with his family, so did my financial support. So think twice, ladies, when you move in with the guy. It's like I wasn't protected. And I have a wonderful family and I wasn't, left high and dry, but it was something that I will never put myself in that position again. So the teacher training kind of hit. I started selling wine. Like I got into this pyramid scheme thing and I was like, whatever, it's survival. And I like wine and it's light and it's fluffy. And it's like, I just need to make a little bit of money. I don't even like big picture stuff was not even like hitting me at the time. So anyway, this kind of goes, I come back to the business and then, the following fall, Ashley and I started having the discussions of like, is this really fulfilling anymore? She had gone on to have 2 children since working with me, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I also share a little bit about that. I built a company that I thought I was going to have my own family. Well, I didn't, but somebody else did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't filling her up and it wasn't filling me up either. I mean, if I'm totally honest, it's like, we were just at this point where we either needed to scale massively in hiring so that we could actually support a nonprofit that was, a $5 million a year operating budget and higher, or stay status quo, which you don't need to know me for long to know that ain't somewhere that I can sit, or just let it go. And we kind of just made this decision. I was like, well, I can teach yoga. I have this new skill. I love it. Like I did go on to like do a mentorship and I started teaching at the studio, like as a sub, and then got a class. And I was like, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to end contracts. We're just going to say goodbye. And I had nothing. I had no plan with anything else. I was like, I just think I need some space. You need to go be a mom. Your kids are older. And we did it. We just like one by one started letting him go, letting him go, letting him go. And some people would look at me and think that is completely insane. But when you think about it, you can only take on as much as you have space for. And when you're filling, like you have all these different silos. You have like your personal, friends and family, and then you've got your romantic love life, and then you have your professional life and maybe your hobbies. And if you're like, man, I really want a new career, but I'm already working 90 hours a week in this one, and I'm depleted and I'm tired and I'm cranky and my whole energy's like all whacked because I hate what I'm doing. I'm not living to my purpose. It's not coming. It's not. You don't have room for it. And I think this applies to many, many other buckets. And like, it's certainly, it can be something as low as like hobbies. Stop saying yes to the things that are very mediocre for you and just say no and see what shows up. You don't know what's coming, good or bad. So we did. We started just ending contracts and that was fine. And we kind of just like dissolved the business. And, people are like, did you sell it? I'm like, sell what? Nothing to sell. It was me. Without like we weren't for sale anymore. So no, we didn't sell it. I'm definitely not somebody who come on here and be like, and then I had my first 7-figure exit. And it's like, that's great for the people who do it, but you don't need to do that to pivot. You don't need to exit for this like great lump sum of money to go do something else. Every single business I've started, I've self-funded, and it's been scrappy, like from the ground up. And it's been on like faith and prayer. Every single time my bank account was about to bottom out, something else hit because I just knew it was supposed to be. And it was true too for moving, the whole like context. I was like, I don't even think Chicago's for me anymore. Like Chicago was a beautiful place to live for almost 18 years, but then it just had this cloud. And then, COVID hit and I was like, this isn't going to be the same. And we can't just keep thinking that just because it's been around forever, it's going to show up in our life the same way. And so I had lived in my house in the West Loop for 8 years. Terribly long amount of time. But I mean, for a single girl and a tiny dog, I had a lot of shit. And I didn't have a lot of room. No wonder I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't have a lot of room. I didn't have room in like my personal life. There was no place to put somebody else's toothbrush, least of all, like, whatever else. And I have this friend who you met on the podcast, Shelly Carlson, who's a now like very famed celebrity stylist, but then was just kind of starting out. And she was just like, telling me, you don't have any room, you got to purge, you got to purge, you got to purge. And I'm like, okay, I know, but how? I'm like, I've got 72 like ill-fitting J. Crew t-shirts. She's like, throw them all away. I'm like, but what if I need one? And she's like, you're telling the universe that you can't afford another J. Crew t-shirt by doing that. I'm like, oh shit, I can afford a lot of those. So like, let's get rid of those. And it was like 12 trash bags of clothes and more trash bags of shoes. And then just like the stuff. And it flew. Like it just went. So all of a sudden there was all this space. And I had an opportunity come up. And even though that wasn't like long lasting and it did sort of end in a less than ideal situation, it did get me out to California, which was very much the calling. Everything happens for a reason is the most cliche thing ever. But when we can just root down and trust and have a little bit of faith that all these things are happening and you don't need to know why in the moment and the why is going to show up later, treat it like pop your popcorn, girl. Like just think about it. Like, well, I'm going to wait for this ending. Great. And I didn't do it then, but I do it now. And practice that way, make life like you're kind of just dancing with this like whole plan unfolding versus trying to like shove all these pegs in holes that were never meant, to be together. So
I think that creating space is so hard for people. And so I love you have quite a beautiful chapter where you talk about that purging your closet and then letting go of, your contracts and allowing space for new things to come in. And I think that's really beautiful because a lot of business owners, if they look out and they're like, oh, I'm not booked next month for this thing, right? That feels like so much scarcity and it's like feast or famine. And so we just fill things. And so I love that you call that out in your book is like a very core tenet of your soul dive and what you advise other people to do. So thanks for talking through that. Yeah. It's a big deal to pivot, to go from PR to yoga studio. That's a big deal. Yeah.
It is, but it's just business ownership.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Doing like whatever your, kind of title is in like one sector to another, it's just like go do it and then find what you love and figure out how to get paid for it. And it's not as hard a thing. Like really just go do it. I knew how to run a business. So pivoting over to yoga, sure, there's some nuances that are different, but it really isn't that different. Like we're constantly learning new things, new software, how to hire people, how to use social media, like whatever, like that is just business ownership. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. And so it was totally a giant. I mean, I think the biggest part of the pivot was I make it out to California. I land in the desert. My parents have a home there. And they were like, just come here and figure out where you want to be. I was like, all right. Took a year going up, Laguna Beach and places in San Diego. And I finally, like, after a year of that, like found this place in Laguna Beach. It's where I am at right now. It's teeny tiny, but it's right on the bluff. So like literally to my right is like the water and I can hear the waves right now. And I was like, this is great. I had gone in-house for an insurance technology company. I was their chief marketing officer. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to start over. Nobody knows me. Nobody knows my past. Like, we don't have to like feel bad for me anymore. This is just totally clean slate. And I worked remote for this like growing business, little cash equity plan. I was like, finally, things are opening up. And a month after I closed on this place and committed all of my money to renovating it, I got fired. But the most ironic part about that is I got fired with the lease to what is now Soul Life Yoga in my inbox. And someone had just very casually said, you should open a yoga studio. You know how to run a business. And I was like, whatever. And then I like meet another woman who's like, well, I own this strip of real estate in this like really high profile area. And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, just take a look. I hadn't even opened it yet, but it was the first thing I did when I lost my job. It was great. I mean, not great in that it was like the hardest couple of years I've ever had. Like building this business 2.5 hours away from where I have a home, but this home became a rental property. Mm-hmm. What did I need? Money. Yeah. What funded that business? This right here funded that business. Wow. So instead of thinking like, wait, what the fuck? Why would I get led to buy this really expensive beach property real estate? That's why. This needed to be for that. This then held me in my moments of breakdowns from being a business owner, breakdowns from grief and loss. You know, my fiance died. He died on September 14th, 2022, which was exactly 2 weeks before Soul Dive Yoga opened. It was the day I was given the key. And I mean, so like in a matter of 2 months' time, I experienced that. I experienced all the trials and tribulations of a new business. And by the way, brick and mortar is really hard. Mm-hmm. You know, Palm Desert, quaint little Pleasantville town, and dealing with the city is like a freaking dream. So if you're trying to do this in places like LA and Chicago and New York, I don't know that I have the stamina for that, but I would run away from home to this home and just like try to see straight. And I'd done it for 2 years. I would rent it, get a little cash, go back, try to survive. It was just this constant survival. I had no space. I had no mental clarity. I was full of chaos. And there's a part of me that has like settled on this whole notion that chaos follows creation. So if you are a creator, that's okay. And it's in your blood. So it's like, here's your awareness, little wake up that it's going to follow you, but you've got to learn how to like get grounded in it. And that's something that I've been like, you know, kind of playing with in the last few months. Is like, I'm never going to stop creating things. I'm on spur to create. But you fast forward, you know, I'm over 1.5 years in with Soul Dive Yoga. I produced this book in the matter of like less than 6 months time. And I get to come home. So I'm home. So when I say I don't know where to send my mail, I literally had to get a new mail key because the freaking salt water rusted it.
You're that close to the beach. I can't wait to come visit. Perfect place to get mail. Thank you for walking through that. What was the process to write this book? Because we met in October and this was on your vision board. You were talking about it. It was so much a part of you, right? You're planning the Rosé Boat in Chicago party. Is that happening? Jody.
Great. I need to, Jody, you only do this.
But I mean, you were already planning the book launch as we were like sitting around the dinner table. So we all knew this book was coming. But how quickly you turned this thing out is incredible. Talk to me about this process of writing this book and having to sift back through the ashes and then rebirth of your life, because it's a heavy topic. It's a heavy few years for you and for people reading it. And it's just, I think we can all relate to that part. So talk to me about that.
So again, since I was in my 20s, I knew I had a book in me because just things were showing up in my life that were wild. Yeah, I mean, because I've had a really, really amazingly wild life, and I'm grateful for it. And it's hopefully going to make me, gosh. So I've always been writing. Like I've written pieces here and there for, you know, like the Yoga Studio blog. I wrote for a magazine in Chicago. Like I've conditioned this skill over time. So it's not like I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to now learn how to write. I already had that. And I think that's important to note. I think everybody has a story. I don't think everybody necessarily needs to write their own, because plenty of people can do it for you. And I can totally speak to that later. But for me, I needed to go through this experience with my fiance and the caregiving to have the depth, because nobody needs another like pretty face talking about dating exposés. That's funny and it's fun and it's light, but it's not the real like authentic draw that I think this gives me an anchor, and it can really get me deeply rooted into somebody's heart and soul. And that's the place that we need to work from, the heart space. It's like the intersection of readiness and timing is really big and at play. Like I've known for a while, and it's like, for me, until I'm really, really ready to land, I don't know if this is like my Gemini, like lots of air happening or whatever. Like I don't land until I'm ready, and it can come off as a little flaky and flighty, and it's not coming from that space. It's just, but when I do root, it's incredibly loyal. And again, the timeline goes really fast. So I had to have space, which I did opening the yoga studio. I just didn't. I had to have, you know, like I had to have the inspiration. I had to kind of like like a whole season of my life needed to be complete for me to be able to go back in and regurgitate what happened. Because again, it's not just about the diagnosis. That's just like, again, it's the spark. And what was happening for me last fall, so before we met in October, almost a year ago in June, I started working with a business coach. Shelly was working with this business coach. I've sort of been like Shelly's little sister, like, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? Take me with you. And so I started working with Danielle, and I asked my parents to split it with me for my birthday. I was like, it's $12,000, the most I've ever spent on myself. Like, can we go half? And they're like, sure. And my dad just turned 80. So old school corporate America guy, he's like, what is this coaching situation? And I'm like, well, now coaches are abundant and everywhere. I was like, I just feel like I have the skill set to do it, and I can hack away at this vision until I'm blue in the face, but I don't want to spend another decade trying to build something I know can happen faster. And I need to put somebody else at the table. And if that wasn't the floodgates opening up, I don't know what was. Working with her was, an introduction to a team that helped me publish the book. It was an introduction to like my CFO. It was an introduction to, just kind of opened up these doors. And I did go on a retreat with that business group in October. And by the time I got there, I was so angry. Like I had been that whole fall. Like, I think this is the raw, real truth. I was miserable, and people around me were miserable being in my presence. It was ugly. I wasn't living in my purpose. I wasn't actually executing the thing that I knew I needed to do in order to get somewhere. I was just like, it just felt like all these new doors were opening, and I couldn't close one thing. I couldn't finish a project. And I just literally did a one-on-one with her, and she's like, you are so angry. Like, what is going to get this anger out of you? And we just we went around in circles, and we got feedback from the other girls, Megan Taylor, who, also in this group. And it was like, can you just sit down and write your damn book? Can you just get this? Can you use this as an outlet? Can you just do it? And I'm like, I know I have to do it, but it's I'm so busy, and I got this and I got this. And they're like, enough, just do it. That's it. That's your homework. Go write the book. Just go write the book. And so, I go home and I regroup, and a week and a half later, I go to Santa Fe. And I was like, okay. And in a week and a half, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I know this retreat's really going to inspire me to go somewhere. I was like, I think I need a brand. I need a brand so the book can hide under the brand, or live under the brand, and Soul Life Yoga can be its own entity. And then I can grow in a way that's not limited by this one business, or by cancer, right? Because the book's not really, some people are like, oh my gosh, yes, let's go talk about our kids. It's not about cancer. It's just one of the things. And what happened for me in Santa Fe was incredibly profound. I was all of a sudden connected to 15 other women that were like me in their challenges and in the things that they've, experienced. And as I'm looking around, though, the imposter syndrome really set in big. I was like, well, they've already done it. What am I doing? I have this and the yoga studio is a beautiful brand. So I don't want to be limiting and saying I just have the yoga studio. But I was like, but man, these women are up level city. I got to get why not me? Why I'm at the table? I came. Why can't I do this too? And I just had to burn through a lot of self-doubt and a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of just a lot of things I'd picked up along the way that made me think I wasn't good enough, or my story wasn't powerful enough, or my trauma wasn't big enough, or my upbringing was too good for something like this. And it was that was all my noise to keep me small and on the bench. And I finally got tired of being on the bench. And when I finally let go and started to let, the relationships unfold, during this time, and really dig into what was happening, in and around me in that space, which was super beautiful and magical, a lot started to open up. And my brand, Soulful Alchemist, was born in the hot tub at the Four Seasons in Santa Fe, which will be a moment I will never forget. And it was clear, and it was true. I came home and I was really, really lit up and ready to go. And I didn't start writing exactly then, but the pieces were starting to really get ready. I was bringing Ashley back on. I was working through, just lining things up in a way that I could actually have the time and space. And sort of by November, December, a little bit was coming out. And then January on, it was I will say I probably wrote the book in 2 weeks' time.
Really? Wow. Yeah. But you were primed. All that work beforehand primed you for those 2 weeks.
Yes. And I didn't do it alone. Yeah. Part of it too, creators are wonderful visionaries. We're not great at executing everything. And so I brought on a team that knows the self-published world really well. I had a coach, I had an editor, I had, within my first meeting, I got an outline. Shoot, all you need is an outline. And I was like, well, I know this. I know what happens in the middle, like only I could bring that to life. And, they kind of navigated me through this whole process. So I think it's important. And one of the big themes of the book is you do not have to do this alone. And you can push everybody away. I did it. I mean, in the 6 months as a caretaker, what can I do? Can I bring you food? Can I take you out? Can I, whatever. The offers were definitely coming in. I am loved. I am supported. And it was there. I couldn't receive it. I didn't know how. I fell apart. I didn't know what to say yes to. I couldn't reciprocate. I couldn't hold 1 ounce of support. It slipped right through my fingers. Totally. Because I was too depleted to embrace it. And that took a long time to recognize and then come kind of full circle with. And it didn't happen until the book was done. And there was a big part of me that was I pushed so many people away. I didn't go to anybody's wedding. Couldn't be happy for you. I'm miserable. How could I be happy for you? I lost friendship. I lost a lot of relationships over it. And I think some of that is the people who are really, really going to be in your camp are always going to be there. And you will go through these peaks and valleys. And the ones that need to fall off will fall off. It doesn't have to be quite so dramatic. But when I was kind of coming to the conclusion, the book was done except the last chapter, which took a minute. I don't know if you started it, but again, life had to unfold for it to be there. So I mean, I was like, okay, well, obviously the book has to get out. And what do I do? And I was like, darn it, it's time to receive. And I took a page out of Carrie Bradshaw's Sex and the City book. And I was like, how she writes it. And she's like, I'll take a pair of Manila Blahniks for my birthday or whatever. And I was like, I'm not married. I don't have a kid. No one's thrown me a shower. Yes, people show up to my birthday parties, but I'm a really good party planner. It's time to receive. So I put this big email out and I basically said, who wants to throw me a book party? I'm ready. You all for showing up for me. I didn't know how to take it in then, and I do now. And this is what I'm looking for. And I made a commitment to anybody, anywhere that was on that email or otherwise. Somebody could be listening to this, connect with my story and be like, shoot, I want to host her a book party. I will be there. Get 20, 30 people or more together, serve them iced tea, wine, or a 5-course meal. Makes no difference to me. We're just going to connect. Read it, don't read it. Do yoga, it doesn't matter, but we're going to go in, we're going to get into the heart, we're going to get into the real and the authentic and the transparent, and we're going to put some chips on the table and we're going to walk away lighter.
We met in Santa Fe at that retreat, which was so beautiful. And you're right, the women that were in that room were life-changing, and everyone came in, I think maybe a little bit with that imposter syndrome, because there are some big names in the room. But I think all of us walked away realizing, oh my gosh, we're all the same. We all have similar challenges. We all have similar hearts. We all really want, a similar thing in the world. And so what I've loved is how much you've asked for help with this. To me, it's been so beautiful to witness, right? And not just you, but everyone in the group is coming forward and saying, can you help with this? Does anyone know this person? And that is such a different way to do business than trying to do everything yourself and hold it. So watching you do that, I think, has given so many of us permission to also ask for similar things, which is your gift to everyone around you. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think the older you get, you realize what you don't know. And there's definitely a lot I don't know. And I feel like I did lose a little bit of time in, my own taking myself out of the ring of life and being complacent, probably keeping my PR agency for a little bit too long and, cycling through these other things. But then it's instead of regretting that, again, just being grateful for that, whatever the experience was, most of which I did not enjoy or but it did get me here. And, being a small business owner or an army of one, you can hack away at it for 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is. You can. I firmly believe that entrepreneurs have a gift and they've got grit. And that's one of my favorite words that comes out of this book in a big way. But why do you have to wait so long? If you just tell somebody or you just give a little, people want to help you. And when they know how, in the way that you will well receive it, they're very eager to show up. So give them that. Don't hesitate. And not, by the way, is going to step up and help you. And you know with that too. You know, there will be a lot of crickets on that ask email. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart though. I mean, asking for a business coach, asking for a book coach, asking these people that have been there and can shortcut it for you is beautiful, right? That is such a beautiful way to do life rather than being super gritty and scrappy all the time. I think we eventually graduate to that place in business where it's like, I need help and I can't do everything. And I'm going to be so much, the return on investment is going to be so much bigger if I'm ready to invest in that. So.
Oh, I thought the business coach was the investment. Oh, dang. Like, buckle up. I invested 6 figures in myself last year.
Beautiful. I love that.
And I haven't taken a paycheck in over 2 years. So again, like, money will find its way to you.
Yes. Yeah.
For more on that, call Christina Hollinger. And we have to believe that. We got to get out of scarcity and out of the lack and out of this like panic. Like literally stop panicking and go do something that puts a little bit more peace on your heart and get clear on what you're supposed to be doing. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's going to unfold for you quite easily. Might be a lot of work, but it's not going to be like forceful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. At what point do you think if people are running a business and they're thinking, oh, okay, I might have a different spark, or maybe I want to copy Alex in this pivot, what is like the spark or the trigger that says like, go do it? Is there something that you live by that you can say like, this for me was a huge anchor to say, yeah, it's time to move, time to pivot? Or do you like the small incremental steps? Because obviously it doesn't happen overnight, but.
I think it's all small incremental steps, whether we want to admit it or not. I don't think there's like I go to bed one way and wake up the other. If you wake up the other, it's like you're just becoming aware of the thing that was already planted. That's kind of my 2 cents there. There's a woman that I've connected with in San Diego. Her name's Fallon, and she's a beautiful yoga teacher. She's also a coach. She's a stylist. She's the director of Vibes. She runs my social media as well as Soul Dive Yogas, and she is the queen of the pivot. And the queen of just permission. Like, she is just giving women permission to live and be who they are, like left and right. And I love her for it. I will say, number one, you can love yoga. That does not mean you need to open a yoga studio or teach yoga full time. We can talk about that over coffee. But that is not for everybody. And it is a very, very difficult to monetize. And that whole, that whole business, because it really is, has a lot of growing to do in its relationship to being financially healthy and sound. So that's like kind of a little warning, because people they go to teacher training and they're like, and now I'm going to do this all the time. And I'm like, you're going to be hungry and bored, and we don't need to be hungry. I think a lot of people are unhappy in their jobs. And I will tell you the one thing I can't stand, and it's complacency. And my last relationship was with somebody who could not be more complacent. Old college t-shirts in the closet, unpacked boxes in his house after moving for 4 years. I'm like, what are you doing with all this shit? Throw it away. Like, there was no room for me, for moving on, for growth, whatever. He lost his job while we were in Santa Fe, by the way. And I stepped into a portal of growth. And so that was probably the beginning of the end for us anyway. But his mindset was complacent. Like, it was just like, and people disguise it as like, well, I'm simple. I don't need a lot. I like my routines. And what I see is resistance and fear and this like paralysis for growth. Like, you're just sitting here like the same way you were 5 years ago. It could not be less attractive. And men and women and everywhere in between, no matter how old they are, they do it. They just settle for what is, because it's already there and it's easy. Even though in the back of their minds, they're like, I hate my job. I'm capable of more. I'm not making enough money. I don't want to live here anymore. And the list goes on. So we turn into complainers. Like, can we please stop that? You just start to do some kind of a practice or a process. I don't care if it's going to yoga or daily meditation or a nice walk or unpacking your shit or throwing away your old t-shirts. Make some room. Try something else, say yes instead of no, and just see what happens. I think there's a lot of watch and learn that goes into it. And I think there's a very, very big gap between I hate my job and I want something else and I am ready to take the leap. So much in here. And there's not one way to get there. But I think the number one thing you have to like start to get clear on is, what are you supposed to be doing here? And you can pivot anytime. You can wake up from Shavasana after a yoga class and be like, and now it's a new start, because it is. So it doesn't always have to be this like big dramatic shift, but we do need to get clear on our purpose. And our purpose does change over time, by the way. I mean, my purpose for a long time was, this kind of nonprofit PR world. I feel like I definitely like carved out an untapped area in that market, for working with these types of organizations and, kind of moving the needle on like research that doesn't always get a lot of publicity or attention. And my company did that. And that was wonderful. And my purpose shifted. For me, it's always like there's themes. So it's like helping people and inspiring people and making some part of the world better. And I think a lot of people would agree that those are pretty good themes, to get behind, and hope their work can do that in some way, shape, or form too. And yoga is really no different.
Yeah.
It's just a different like title. But I'm using all the same skills, the marketing, the PR, the communications, the connecting with people, the inspiring, the motivating, like I speak about Soul Dive sometimes in the way that I would speak about a nonprofit. Like, who do we serve? If we're not showing up to serve, if we're showing up just to get something back, it's fleeting. It's that quick hit, instant gratification, right? Like there is the magic in the long game, but the long game doesn't have to be forever. I think there's that sweet spot of, kind of sitting with who am I and what am I supposed to be doing here? And then what could that look like? And then starting to take some actionable steps in that direction. Because if we don't move towards our manifestations, it's all a bunch of happy horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
You love that.
Bringing it back to your favorite chapter.
My favorite chapter.
Yeah.
We love happy horseshit, especially in California. We're surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Like all this talk. It's like maybe if you walked it a little bit, you would see some things show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You said two things that I think are really, really impactful, right? One of it is your purpose can change and should change as you grow and mature. And I think that's beautiful permission for people, because I think oftentimes we just think we have to get locked into something and this is who I am. And the other thing you said, which I think is really important, you talk about this in the book just a tiny bit, is getting out of that victim mentality. And I think, if people are in something, the energy doesn't feel good, they're complaining about it more than they are happy, there's no more joy. That's always a sure sign that it might be time to start taking steps in a different direction. So, yeah.
Energy is really hard. And so like moment for that, like it is not as easy as always waking up and putting up one foot in front of the other, because there are so many factors that can be at play, right? You may not have stable income. You may not have stable support systems or, it's like, so I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. None of this is easy. I think the beauty of it is that you don't have to do all the things to move forward. You can pick one and it doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything to do it. It is free to purge. And by the way, people will buy your shit. And that all just stuns and shocks me, but it is a fact. So use it, but stop, you have to, first of all, be aware that you're stuck. That's not easy. And then do something to get unstuck, like shake the energy and move it. I feel very lucky and that I can feel everything. I can feel if I'm stuck. I can feel if I'm moving. I can feel if like the vibe in the room has shifted since I've walked into it. All of that comes very naturally to me. And I do think that type of intuition is within every single body. I think women may be slightly more intuitive than men, but we all have that gift and we can fine tune it in many, many different ways, but we have to listen to it. Over and over and over, you're being told, like, I hear voices in my head. Hello, sound crazy. Otherwise, but actually, mostly, I'm like really grateful for it. It's an actual, I'm being told what to do. All we have to do is listen. And I do believe it to be true for everybody. We hear it. It's just, are you going to ignore it? Are you going to ignore the subtle tap so that it shows up and completely throws your life for a loop? Because it's supposed to, because you ignored it. Or are you going to listen and respond and sort of move in this, kind of dance-like mentality with what is for you?
That's one of my favorite parts of your book, because you really start out with this 2x4 moment of the diagnosis and you really move into, towards the end of your book, this more intuitive type process and, the hits that you got during breath work and what you do in your yoga studio. And so, it's this kind of this natural healing arc, but it also is a very clear who you were before to where you are now, where you can say this intuitive part of you is a big deal and everyone can access it. But I'm curious if you would have said that at the beginning, because, just reading your story, it seems like you needed that 2x4 moment to get here. Do you think that's true?
I do think it's true. I think in a lot of ways, I've always been kind of highly intuitive. Because again, I really do think we all are. That's not a, my mother in so many ways is like completely unaware, but so intuitive. Like, things that she's called, I'm like, really? Like, so yeah, I do think that's there. I was not listening to the subtle invitation. I wanted it. I wanted what I wanted, and I was going to stop at nothing to get it. And it literally took meeting the love of my life and losing it, and not losing it in the like, I sometimes, and this is like this is a really horrible and dark place to go, but it's real. I wonder if it would be easier if I lost him in a car accident, where it's like, okay, it's gone, learn the lesson, grieve, move on. That's not how it went. It was a very, very slow, painful death, truly, but so many deaths. Endings are deaths. They are. They all are. We don't like to admit it because we're wired for life. And that's just the fact of our humanness. But endings are these forms of deaths. And so many things were ending for me in that moment that I was unwilling to see. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just a relationship, but it was all these titles that I had put on myself that I wanted as wife, as mother, as like, this whole dream was slowly dying. And slowly dying for me, and I had a front row seat to it. And then you think about all the people that had the front row seat to watching me go through it, and it's like, this is a horrible movie that really nobody wanted to see, but there is value in it. There's value in sitting in that discomfort and that pain and that slow release, because God willing, I'll never, ever try to hang on to something that's on fire again. If there's a dumpster fire in your life, my only question is, why are you running back toward it? Yeah. You don't have to like it. Many, many things that happen we don't like. And nobody guaranteed it.
Your story is so vulnerable, and I'm just so grateful that you came and shared all of this with us. And for everyone listening, please go get Alex's book. It's beautiful. We'll make sure we link it up. But Alex, is there you've given us a lot, but is there like one last piece of advice or thing that you are looking forward to in this next season as you're co-creating a life that you're just really excited about?
I think there's a couple things. I think number one, it's something I constantly remind people of, is that you're not alone. You're really not. Life can feel insanely isolating. And I say that as somebody who's been surrounded by a lot of really wonderful people for the whole almost 39 years I've been on this planet. But just because you're surrounded by people does not mean you don't feel completely lonely in that space. And that is very real. And I'm not going to take that away from you, but you aren't alone. And neither is the person that you're looking across the table from, who you think their life is perfect with no issues, and the Instagram feed is lovely. Like, they hurt too. And so I think it's important that we remember, and this is like my favorite lesson of Brene Brown's, is that we're connecting with the emotion that underpins the experience and not the experience. And before, I was connecting with the experience. Nobody knows what I feel because I'm 33 and I should never have to go through something like this. Woe is me. I'm too young. It's the love of my life. I mean, I could list all the ways in which I was like, nobody's going to understand what I'm feeling. But guess what? Literally everybody does. Everybody's had that person taken away from them, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or a high school friend or a loved one or multiple. We've felt grief and loss. And we have felt pieces of our life fall through our fingertips when we've tried so hard to grip onto them. So instead of thinking nobody understands me, why don't we just all give them the benefit of the doubt that they actually do through the emotion? So knowing that you're not alone is really, really one of the big ones. And the other thing is, like, I think getting to the place where you're living in your purpose is so important. And I am not a coach. I'm not going to be working one-on-one with people. That's just not my calling. I'm going to share my story, and the second book is already like kind of in the works. So you can connect with me there too. But landing in your purpose is what's going to make your life full of more ease. It's going to be peaceful. It's going to be more present. It's going to be more purposeful. And figuring that out, getting quiet so that you can actually hear what you're invited in to do is so important. And you can take a class at Soul Dive Yoga, and that'll be like a tiny step in the right direction. So.
Gosh, Alex, you're so beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you? And where can everyone buy your book?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. It is called Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep. And you can find more information at soulfulalchemist.com. I will say the Soulful Alchemist does put out a weekly newsletter. I call it the Poetic Wisdom Drop. So if you want a little bit of me in your inbox, you can drop your email at soulfulalchemist.com and we can connect there too.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Everyone go read this book. It's worth a read. And Alex is definitely worth a follow. And I can't wait to see what comes out for you the rest of this year.
Me?
Right. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.